Residents in a southern Chinese province told us authorities discharged the flood reservoir without alerting them, and they saw houses collapsing and authorities concealing the real death toll. A part of China's capital is under lockdown again after a recent spike in confirmed CCP virus cases. The center of the cluster is close to China's seat of the state, Zhongnanhai. The Washington-Beijing rivalry continues as China now surpasses the U.S. as the top oil importer of Venezuela. This despite U.S. sanctions. Hundreds of protesters came out in solidarity to mark 1 year since a major turning point in the Hong Kong pro-democracy protests. And investors are suing a U.S.-listed Chinese company for misleading them about potential risks from the virus. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A part of Chinese capital Beijing is under lockdown again after a recent spike in confirmed CCP virus cases. The center of the cluster, a wholesale food market, is only 20 minutes drive away from Zhongnanhai, the headquarters of the Chinese regime. One district in Beijing has put itself on a wartime footing after 7 people tested positive for the CCP virus. All 7 were clearly showing symptoms. Another 46 people also tested positive in the same area, but none of them appear to show symptoms. China doesn't count asymptomatic patients as confirmed cases, even though they can still transmit the virus to others. The cluster of cases was centered around a market known as Xinfadi. The market is around 10 miles away from China's seat of the state, Zhongnanhai. Local officials say that 6 out of the 7 confirmed virus patients had recently visited the market. Authorities have since shut it down, along with other nearby markets. Video posted online shows a large number of China's armed police force stationed outside Xinfadi. Another showing people being taken away by buses. Research samples were also taken from the market, and the virus was found on 40 of them, including on cutting boards used for imported salmon in the market. Chinese media has cited multiple experts saying that there has been no evidence that salmon can transmit the virus. Xinfadi claims to be the largest agricultural wholesale market in Asia. The market supplies about 80% of Beijing's agricultural products and has over 15,000 people going in and out every day. Local Chinese media say over 1,700 managerial staff alone work there. 11 neighborhoods near the market have been locked down, complete with 24-hour guards placed there. Due to the new outbreak, Beijing has suspended sports events and tourism from other parts of China, effective immediately. It also dropped plans to reopen schools next week for students in grades 1 through 3. An update on the flooding in southern China. Residents of China's Guangxi province are accusing authorities of opening the floodgate of an upstream reservoir. Authorities reportedly acted to help discharge the flooding, but locals say they weren't notified. They also said authorities have underreported the death toll.
The peak of the flood is about 9 feet high. Many things were washed away and many people died. We're not seeing this being reported by the media.
Prolonged heavy rainfall has triggered severe flooding in China. Videos circulating online even show houses collapsing into floodwaters. Guangxi province is among the worst hit. Local resident Ms. Chen says her area has been without electricity and water for a week, adding that she knows dozens have died. But Guangxi authorities have put the death toll at 6. The flood discharge drowned areas near the riverbank.
Both banks of the river were damaged. Houses were flooded and collapsed.
Another resident, Mr. Wang, says the Chinese regime is sending very few disaster relief supplies. He says there's no emergency shelter for him to go to and is now staying at a friend's house. Very few reports on the flooding have been published by Chinese media, but the videos appearing on social media are shocking. Heavy rain drenches the area. Houses collapse. Cars drift in the floodwaters. Trees fall and are washed away. Streets are now underwater. One suspension bridge has almost completely disappeared. Only 2 ropes remain. Roads collapse. A small stream is turning into a mid-sized river. Those affected by the disaster are sticking together. For now, some of them only have rice to eat, and some of them appear to have lost their appetites. Despite all they have lost, locals are still trying to help each other. Some people can be seen standing in shallower water, trying to rescue others being washed away by strong currents. Hundreds of protesters came out in solidarity in Hong Kong to mark 1 year since a major turning point in the pro-democracy protests. Despite virus prevention measures limiting gatherings to 8 people, many demonstrators vowed to keep on protesting. One demonstrator said she's especially pained thinking of all the students.
I am feeling a lot of pain. Over the course of a year, many students have been injured, arrested, or forced to commit suicide. We can't track this, but we believe it.
Mask-wearing protesters gathered in shopping malls and working-class districts, singing the movement's unofficial anthem, "Glory to Hong Kong." While riot police carrying pepper spray canisters carried out mass stop and searches. On June 12 last year, police fired tear gas and rubber bullets as protesters rallied in the heart of the business district against a proposed bill that would have allowed extradition to mainland China.
I would tell the youngsters, don't stay silent. Come out and protest for the next generation. You can't trust the Chinese Communist Party.
While the bill was withdrawn in September, the protest movement has since evolved into broader appeals for democracy in the city. This comes amid fears Beijing will strip the hub of its freedoms. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is planning a trip to meet China's top diplomat in Hawaii. But media reports say the arrangements are not yet finalized. Pompeo has criticized China on issues from the CCP virus pandemic to its Hong Kong policy to the treatment of its ethnic and religious minorities. Relations between the countries have deteriorated in recent months. An Australian man, Bengali sheriff, was sentenced to death by a Chinese court after being arrested at Guangzhou airport. He was trying to smuggle meth from China to Australia. Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade says it is deeply saddened by the decision. Relations between China and Australia have deteriorated significantly in recent months when Australia first pressed for an independent international investigation into the source of the CCP virus in late April. The following month, China banned 4 Australian beef exporters, then announced restrictions on Australian barley imports. China's Ministry of Education urging Chinese students to reconsider studying in Australia due to the risk of CCP virus and what they've called racist incidents targeting Asians. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison called China's claims rubbish, saying Australians will never trade their values in response to coercion from the CCP. Students from 2 Chinese universities for science and technology discovered that they can no longer use a software program. MATLAB is widely used by science students in China. MathWorks MATLAB's developer explains that the license is discontinued because the 2 universities are on the U.S.'s entity list. Any entities listed must obtain permission from the U.S. authorities to use the technology. The restriction has enormous impact. If the 2 universities ignore the restriction, they can be sued. For example, if their research papers use any data, graphs, or charts generated by MATLAB, the universities that are banned from MATLAB will have to begin an unprecedented large-scale process to convert MATLAB code into other code, and the process may take up to a year. And another chapter in the Washington-Beijing rivalry, China has replaced the U.S. as Venezuela's top oil importer. This comes after the U.S. imposed sanctions on Venezuela's state-owned oil company, an effort to topple socialist President Nicolas Maduro. After U.S. refineries stopped buying crude oil from Venezuela, China moved to the top of the list, becoming the #1 purchaser. According to Reuters, China imported an average of 350,000 barrels of crude oil daily in the first half of 2019. The U.S. tightened sanctions on Venezuela last year. Any foreign country who does business with the Venezuelan regime will face the same penalty. As a result, China's imports of oil slowly trickled down, but didn't stop completely. According to Reuters, China bypassed the wrath of the U.S. by making use of a Switzerland-based unit of Russia's state-owned oil company. The workaround made it look like the oil was coming from Malaysia instead of Venezuela. Malaysia is a popular transfer location because it's close to Singapore, one of the world's largest oil trading and storage locations. Reuters found that within 6 months, China got its hands on nearly 20 million barrels of oil through this method. Those shipments made up more than 5% of Venezuela's total 2019 exports, worth around $1 billion. Those sales provided financial support for dictator Nicolas Maduro's rule. Reuters discovered that the rebranded sales also continue into this year. Now, the reports have caught the Trump administration's attention. Earlier this year, Washington also sanctioned one of Russia's state-owned oil firms, which had been helping shuttle the oil from Venezuela to China. The company denies wrongdoing, but the U.S. is considering placing more sanctions on Chinese firms purchasing the sanctioned oil. Due to the pressure, Venezuela's crude oil output has dropped by more than 20% this year. It now produces less than 700,000 barrels per day. But there are signs that illegal trade will continue. Two small Mexican firms have caught the attention of the U.S. FBI as potential violators. They've recently appeared on the oil trading scene, shuttling oil from Venezuela. Earlier this year, a Panama-flagged tanker carrying 700,000 barrels of crude oil near a Venezuelan port also attracted attention. The ship belongs to one of the Mexican firms. That vessel arrived at its destination in Malaysia several months later. The Mexican firm has since declared bankruptcy. Meanwhile, the oil is currently en route to China. Investors of a U.S.-listed Chinese company are suing it for misleading them. They say the company failed to alert them about the potential risk from the CCP virus. Investors could lose as much as half of their money in the company's stock.
A U.S.-listed Chinese company is being sued in a class action lawsuit for misleading investors. Phoenix Tree Holdings operates an apartment rental chain in China called Danke. It went public on the New York Stock Exchange on January 17th this year, issuing millions of shares at $13.50 each. The class action lawsuit alleges Phoenix was not transparent in its initial public offering or IPO files. Investors say the company didn't tell them about customer complaints or negative press about its questionable practices, including signing renters up for bank loans without their knowledge and using the loans to fund its operations. Danke operates in about a dozen cities in China, including Wuhan, the original epicenter of the pandemic. The lawsuit also claims in the IPO files that Phoenix only said that its business could be affected by Ebola virus, H1N1 flu, and some other flu-type syndromes, but that didn't mention the CCP virus, or novel coronavirus, even though that virus had been spreading in Wuhan since December last year. The company's shares have traded as low as about $6 since the IPO. That's less than half of its initial price. It's currently trading at around $9.
The virus has made it a tough year for many families, children especially, who were often separated from their friends during the lockdown. But things are looking up as summer camps start to reopen. Excitement is in the air as children arrive at this YMCA day camp in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis is letting summer camps and youth activities in the state open without restrictions. One mother says it's a relief knowing that the YMCA is there for her kids.
Because a lot of people that I work with don't have childcare right now. They're going through trying to find childcare for their kids. Some people were unable to come back to work because of childcare.
The governor is giving local organizations and governments the freedom to set their own rules. The Florida YMCA president says they're training camp counselors on how to talk to kids about the virus and the stress that comes with it.
Understanding that kids have been out of school now for almost 3 months. The other side is making sure that we're providing them with the happy, great experience and a stress release.
Campers are organized into smaller groups and safer activities. They also take sanitation seriously, spraying disinfectant on shoes and washing hands. For parents, knowing their children are in a safe, clean environment is a weight off their shoulders.
They're doing the right thing when it comes to safety. They have a nurse. They're checking temperatures. They're doing the proper sanitation protocols. So it's just It puts my mind at ease when I'm working, and it just makes the day better for me at work.
The governor said he trusts parents to make their own decisions with their doctors. The virus hit Britain's economy hard. Official data shows a record economic downturn. Officials say they're not surprised and they're in for a long and slow recovery.
Official data shows Britain's economy shrank by a record 20.4% in April during the lockdown. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's not surprised by the data.
And if you think about it, coronavirus is likely to hit a country like the UK economically very hard. We depend on services, on human contact, many things that the coronavirus makes very, very difficult. But we're also very resilient in a dynamic economy, and we will bounce back.
The service sector shrank by 19% in April. Manufacturing was down over 24%, and construction crashed by nearly half. Britain's central bank predicted as much, but it says there are signs the economy is coming back to life. The big question is what happens next.
This whole question about how much long-term damage is there going to be, and that's the thing that we have to be very focused on, because, of course, that's where jobs get lost and that's where damage is done to people's livelihoods. Now, we hope that will be as small as possible, but we have to be ready to take action.
The Bank of England warns the UK could see its deepest recession in the past 300 years.
In global news about the virus, Brazil's death toll soars. The German-Polish border reopens, and Moscow streets are as busy as they were before the lockdown.
Brazil's virus death toll is now over 41,000. The country has reported more than 1,200 deaths every day since Tuesday, but is moving to ease quarantine restrictions and reopen businesses. The Greek Prime Minister announced that Greece is ready to welcome tourists this summer. He said the tourists' health and safety is the #1 priority. He made the announcement from one of Greece's most popular travel destinations, Santorini. The island is famous for its sunsets and black sandy beaches. The Polish-German border reopened on Saturday. Poland started to allow travel from fellow European countries again. Germany is likely to lift border controls with most of its remaining neighboring countries on June 15th. But the government may reconsider if the situation gets worse. And Moscow's streets are bustling again. According to Russian search engine Yandex, 76% of people happened to be outside their homes on Wednesday. Russia's number of cases recently surpassed 500,000, but Moscow's mayor announced the easing of the lockdown, saying the pandemic was receding in the city.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest updates, and see you next time.